right? You sign developmental roster, it works. It doesn't work. It is what it is. You're 8th again. Oh well. It's just like from my perspective, if you're a TSM, a C9TL, like this is like one of the worst things you could do. And so I hope that TSM figures it out. I hope that they go back to signing good talent and start winning again, because this developmental stuff definitely is not it for them.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Mo. What do you want to shout out before we go?
Just say shout out you, Travis.
Well,
I appreciate. Oh, no, go ahead, Liz.
I wanted to comment on his last thing, because it's something I remember saying this on stream a year ago. The second that a top tier org or a top tier team has one fall from grace, that's it. It's not that they know how to sign or find good talent. It's that they're the best fucking org. So top talent will just hold out for them to eventually come to them if the talent knows that they're actually the creme de la creme. It's not that they have some magical scouting people, or that they have people that are competent at scouting, or that they have people that are just like finding these players. No, the players know this is the top org. I want to be in here. I'm going to deny every other offer because this is the top org. TSM, with the fall from grace that it just had, I think that's gone.
I think
and this has happened to other orgs.
Yeah.
It happened in StarCraft too.
I think it's a really interesting point, because it kind of goes back to what the caller was saying about like top org shouldn't do this, because then you kind of ruin your goodwill where like you're the creme de la creme. I'm kind of getting pulled, kind of agreeing more with this take the more it's gone on. I can understand financially why you might be like, okay, I can't afford this ballin' ass roster, so I'm going to take an easier, like a lower, like a, yeah, but even then you'd still want to retain your talent. Like, you want to keep Speaker happy and stuff and these kinds of things, you would think. So I don't know.
It's like what's saying. This is a disaster over there.
Well, what this opens up is the possibility for super bottom tier orgs to nuke their entire roster and then try to approach lots of people who want to play together, right? Because they have enough slots for it if they're willing to nuke the whole roster, but you won't find that on a top team.
The vitality approach.
That's the only positive, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's a really great point, LS, because I remember Kelby and I used to talk about this a ton, because you had players who would just take huge pay cuts. Like TSM was able to pay a lot less for their roster because it was TSM. Because like it's funny to think about now, but it's like they always made finals, and so you knew just join TSM, you get to play with Bjerg, and you're gonna go to finals if you do that. So like, and a lot of players are, they would rather win than make an extra $100,000 or something. So it just was like a huge recruiting strategy.
I have a really funny story.
Sure.
About T1. I don't think Joe would get upset about this. Okay. My coaching contract on T1 was half of my streamer contract. Reason being, you get to be a part of T1 LoL.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way,
you know what? Actually, like,
for a long time.
Good point.
For a long time, it wasn't even just like that you would win. It was also like back whenever LCS players used to stream so much, like you would join TSM and immediately your stream numbers would just skyrocket. Like you would have, this was obviously back before contracts outpaced streaming revenue dramatically, so then people didn't feel like they needed to stream. But like you could just join TSM, turn on your stream, and suddenly you'd be able to make a ton of money because you'd be able to stream to thousands of people. And so that was another huge factor in it. It was like just the affiliation with the brand was huge. And I like since then you've had other teams that have been able to kind of pull this off. And yeah, I do wonder about it. I mean,
so
I would.
No. You finish your thing first, because mine's
I was
a
gonna
tangent.
Say, like I think I would be like, so in my head, I mean, I was totally fine taking like an unholy, like I would, like let's say that like in 2020 I made X, right? I would be totally fine taking a massively reduced income for 2021 if, able to participate on, T1 LoL or something, right? Just as an example. So that is a real thing.
Yeah.
But
I was
getting to hang out next to Faker, I think, is a good way to get attention.
I was going to throw out a traditional sports example. Everyone likes to play with Tom Brady. I mean, he just retired, but like when he left the Patriots and joined, like people took pay cuts, like you were saying, to play. This happens in traditional sports. They take pay cuts to play with them. What's also really funny is like when this happens, people go, people do this all the time about Tom Brady's defense. This is a bit of a tangent, but like people are like, oh, Tom Brady always played with the best defenses. Everyone, like, the only reason he won Super Bowls is because he was playing with the best defenses. It's like, you know why he had the best defenses? Because they fucking wanted to play with Tom Brady. You know why Faker always has good teammates, or like Bengi had like good, like, because people want to fucking play with them.
And same with Beard.
It's such a stupid chicken or the egg argument. It's like, why these guys keep having good teammates? I don't like, they keep getting carried by their good teammates. It's like, yeah, because they're fucking amazing and everyone knows it and they want to play with them.
Yeah. Thank you, Mo, so much for the call. Wait, sorry, you didn't finish your shoutouts? What was your shout
Yeah, I was giving you praise, man. So I was gonna say, shout out Travis. I think the scene's really lucky to have you. I think you do a lot of good stuff. So I appreciate all the work you do.
Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, see ya.
Mark, we're gonna take a quick break before you hop into the next caller, folks. Hello, everyone. I am here to talk to you about Alienware. This is our first sponsor break for the episode. Please go check out alienware.com/Travis. They have a whole slew of stuff that is coming out, including a 34-inch OLED. I can't talk about it yet, but that thing looks beautiful. I mean, you can go find out about it, but I will have one that I can talk about very soon, and everything I've heard has been that it is fantastic. They also have new versions of their X series notebooks and their M series notebooks that are available now, and then they've recently announced the X14. I'm very excited. I'm going to be getting one of those soon, and so I'm going to be able to show that off on a future episode of Hotline League. But go check this out. I've actually had several people this week hit me up and let me know that they've been ordering using my code, or in some cases, code doesn't always work, so in those cases they've just been letting me know, which is awesome. It just depends on the product. But thank you so much for doing that. That's actually very helpful. I send all that stuff over to Alienware. It is very cool. But literally, this is a great time if you're looking at Alienware stuff to go look at their hardware, because just in the past 6 months, they've released a ton of really cool stuff. So go check them out, alienware.com/Travis. Love working with Alienware. Thank you to them for sponsoring the show and so much of what we do here. And yeah, we love Alienware. Check the link in the description. And there's always... Oh, here's the last thing. Some people sometimes forget. They message me, or they'll literally DM me on Twitter and be like, hey, what was your code again? If you ever are trying to figure out what the new code is, because they update it usually once a quarter, it's in the YouTube description of basically every single video that I post on my YouTube. So feel free to just, if you're trying to remember the code, go look in the YouTube description, because it'll always be there. Okay, Mark, you want to go grab the next car?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sold, honestly.
Thank you. You'll be getting one, I'm sure. Okay, Natural Ninja, thank you for gifting a sub. 2-pack Colombian Director Donut, Omega Diamond Zinc, Vanilla, Insane DC, Sherman. Thank you, Sherman. Hope you're doing well. Boba Cola, thank you for the 54 months. And Cannabis, thank you.
Wait, is that Sherman from Riot?
Yes, Riot Games. He's a huge fan of the show.
What a
He tunes in every week
individual.
to hear me shit on Riot and complain about them. It's
All right.
It's similar to the co-streaming experience. Okay, Wizard is here. Wizard, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Gulfport, Mississippi.
Gulfport, Mississippi. What do you want to talk about on the show?
My take was that player retention is not currently a problem in the LCS.
Oh boy. Okay. What do you mean by player retention? First off, let's define it.
Well, you talk at least twice a year, I'd say, about teams and player retention on how, I guess, roster turnover from split to split or year to year. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Is, I guess, roster turnover.
Gotcha. So you're saying that is not an issue. For those that don't know, they can go take a look at Run It. We did 2 of these. It was Tim upon my request doing these. Basically looking at turnover in terms of how many players leave a team that they're competing for, and how many players leave the LCS that every year. Because I have argued, you say at least twice a year, I would say at least twice a month, that one of the biggest issues with the LCS right now is you can't build brands around players, because Perks shows up, everybody says care about Perks, and then he fucks off after a year, and you're like, okay, did we say Perks? We really meant a Blaze Olive. So I have argued that this is an issue. Wizard is incorrectly arguing that it is not. So why don't you let me know why it is not?
Well, First, just a quick number breakdown. I think the only league that you can really compare roster turnover with in the LCS is LEC. I think that the way that LCK and LPL manages and handles their rosters and their development leagues is just too drastically different of a comparison. But the average for the average LCS, let's see, retained. So in the LCS, we retain the teams retain 23 players basically. So for example, Cloud9 retained Fudge and Blabber, that's 2. TSM retained Honey and Spica, that's 2. So it was a total of 23, and that was only 3 off from the LEC. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but they were almost identical across the board. They almost had the same numbers when it came to new signings and players retained, and also free agent pickups from other teams that were players that were playing for other teams in the same league on the previous split or year. I don't think LEC has a roster turnover. They're very
Sorry,
good
so
about
you're saying LEC. So you're saying other leagues are experiencing the same rates of turnover as we're experiencing.
Yes, and I think that it's healthy.
Okay.
Going back to the last caller as well, bringing in, if you can clearly see a ceiling for a player, why would you keep him in the league when you can either import a player that you feel like has a higher ceiling, or bring up a player from your academy team that you feel like has a higher ceiling? So in that case, I think that roster turnover is healthy when you are doing your best to put together the 5 best players that you can, right? If you're not actively trying to put together the 5 best players you can and just saying, well, let's run it back from last year when your results were mediocre, you're not trying to win.
So in 2020, if you started the year on an LCS team, you most likely did not start in 2021. We turned over 54% of our players in that year. Do you don't even in that rate, you still feel like that's healthy?
I admit that year was probably a bit high, but I think that last year's was healthy.
We were at 44%. So it's a 10%
I think,
difference. You feel like it's okay then?
well, because a 10% difference is a full team. So I do think that it's a significant enough difference to say that, yeah, that's healthy. I think that the issue with building your brand around a player is not, it doesn't have to do with roster turnover, because most of the rosters are doing a pretty good job of keeping at least 1 or 2 faces to be the face of their organizations.
Yeah, but they're usually, so previously, like, TSM was able to retain Bjerg, for instance. I guess you could argue TL is retaining Core, but it's kind of difficult, because I feel like as for the league, there's a need to have not just teams or organizations that are really big brands, but also players, right? Like, everybody knows Michael Jordan, everybody knows Kevin Durant. Like, there's all these players that become huge household names where, like, I don't even follow the NBA, but I obviously know and recognize a lot of the names. Even whenever Mark was talking about the Warriors earlier, I recognize a ton of those folks. And so for me, my concern is the rate at which we are often throwing those players out. Like, we do it on an almost like yearly basis. And so there are players that folks really cared about that were in the league last year that are now gone, and that we built up. Like, it would be a very interesting experiment around this stuff would be to go look at, like, what are the hype trailers every year for, like, the last 4 years, and ask how many of those players that the league was positioning kind of as the stars of the league are still in the league. Obviously, like, Double Lift would be gone, and as a prime example, but I think that people would be surprised at how many other players are just not going to be there.
Well, how many reckless hype pieces do you think the LEC did last year? And has that been a significant dip in viewership as a result? Has there been less, I guess?
I haven't been tracking LEC viewership, but I have heard that it's down year over year. But they also got perks back. So I think that that's kind of helpful for them. They've also done a much better job of, like, building the brands of these players year over year, and they've been able to kind of, like, leverage caps, reckless, perks, a lot of these names for a very long time. Whereas I think we were really, like, beholden to basically Doublelift and Bjergsen for a while. Like, it felt like those were the two players that we constantly talked about.
So I agree 100% with that. I don't think that it's a roster turnover problem, though. I think that it was more of a, not necessarily the broadcast team themselves, but the broadcast as a whole showing these players in the way that the LEC does. So one really good example that I thought that the LCS used to do that they stopped doing was they used to play individual teams content pieces in the hour and a half lead up to LCS starting.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from experience of me and a few friends, we became much more interested and knew a lot more about several different players just based on watching those. And I don't understand why they stopped doing it. It was a really good way to get us not only interested in individual players and storylines and teams, but to check out their content ourselves on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's cool, and I wish they were still doing it. The viewership on the broadcast at that time is like very slim. So I feel like it's tough to like say they should. I mean, I think they should do it. It makes sense, but I'm not surprised that, like, I don't buy that was like a very significant driver of fandom. Like, there are obviously things that could do more. I'm trying to find a list of the rosters from previous years so that I could just say, like, I think one interesting question is, in 2020, if you watch the LCS and you were a fan of either TSM, TL, C9, or 100T, what does that roster look like now compared to then? And I would imagine that almost every single player is no longer on any of these teams that you were watching from literally 2 years ago.
Well, Blabber's in his, I think, 9th.
Yeah. I mean, there are still going to be like one or two folks on all these different teams, but like, they are not like. It is incredibly hard, I think, for a fan of an org to decide or to want to continue to be a fan of the team whenever you've spent a year building players up. Like, how much effort did the LCS and C9 put into perks? And I know that you mentioned Reckless, but they were able to use LCS was able to leverage Reckless for many years. And even now, he's technically in their, I don't know if you want to call it development league, right? But like, he's in the league right below them. In LCS, like, we put a bunch of effort behind building up perks, and then he was here for 1 year, and now he's gone, right? Same thing with Sword Art, same thing with Alfari. And so, I look, on the LEC side, if they have the exact same level of turnover, I would be surprised. Maybe they do. I would ask maybe, like, where is that turnover happening? Is it in the top half of the league or is it in the bottom half of the league? And even if they do, I would say then I am still impressed that they are able to do that, because even if they are able to build viewership off of like the constantly rotating like musical chairs that we have, that I think is even a bigger testament. Because when you look at traditional sports, fandom is built around like long-standing legacies and long-standing players. And we throw ours out like every couple of years, in some cases every year. If you were a 100 Thieves fan in 2020, like, hopefully you were a fan of someday, because like that last year you had everybody else gone, and that's the kind of stuff that I think concerns me about building long-term viewership for the league.
Yeah, my two things on that are that LEC and LCS both have an average of the longest tenured player on a team as being 5 splits. And then the other thing, I believe this year actually teams are doing a much better job of trying to build up a specific player or specific like 2 players as the face of their organization, and that it's going to be a really big benefit going forward. I think that Super Week, the broadcast did a fantastic job of starting to really hype up team rivalries and specific players on teams that look like they could be there for long term. I was really impressed. I didn't really know how good of a job they were doing the rest of the split, but I really felt like in all the content pieces and discussions around Super Week, I was learning a lot more about players that had either been around for at least a full year or looked like they could be around for a significant portion of time.
Well, the last thing I'll say on this, and I'll ask Mark and Alice if they have anything they want to chime in on this, but like, that's great. You got fandom built around some of these players on this past Super Week. what happens whenever EG doesn't make playoffs in summer? Well, I guess it's top 8, whatever. They don't make Worlds, or they have some bad showing or something like that, and somebody over there decides like they need to change things, and JoJo and Danny, who they built around, decide to or they trade them off to somebody else. Or what's more likely, I think, is oftentimes like the decisions that are made are player motivated, right? Where like Danny and JoJo decide they don't want to play with each other, so now they're gone. Like they're not playing together. One of them is on a different team, or something like that. That's the type of thing that's, I think, really tough, because you just have people might become a fan of EG because of JoJo and Danny. Now those players are off on different teams, or one of them has decided to go take a year off or play an academy, or I don't know. Like that's my bigger concern. Mark or Ellis, obviously I've dominated a lot of this conversation, so I don't know if you guys have opinions on that.
Nope.
This I mean, for me, this is such a thing that is so difficult to even talk about that, you know.
Well, because I know,
here's
here's my take. Obviously, I care, and I know you care about this too, LS, because I know you've talked to players about brand building, and part of the reason Fudge does so much content and so many interviews is because you know how important it is for these players to be something other than like the character on the screen during these games. On the other hand, I also know, LS, that you're just like, get fucking wins. North America win. Get shit players out. And so like it's very funny, because I'm obviously on one end of the spectrum where I just am like, yes, maybe we're not winning, but we're also losing fans because people don't have a player to attach to. You're also kind of like, there needs to be some churn, I'm sure, or you want churn just so that we can get better players in.
Berserker's had his Twitter for 2 months, and he has more followers than some people who've been in the LCS for years. Like, I mean, I made Berserker's first few tweets. I think it's fantastic that like Cloud9 management.
But you're his Joe Marsh.
Or it might be Revan. I don't know who's doing it. I mean, they're keeping it up, right? They're helping the Koreans tweet. They're helping the meme, etc. I think all of that stuff is really important. Summit said in an interview or something, or a tweet, that he's going to stream this week. Like, there's a lot of hype around him, right? Brand build. In Korea, you know, I was trying, so no one really knew who Berserker was, or like the Koreans, right? So I was like trying to do guest streams on my Twitch channel, because I have the largest brand on the entire team. So like, I'm trying to give exposure. I think all of this stuff's really important, which it cycles back to something I said earlier about like, you know, what is the business model of certain teams, because it can't be content and all this other stuff, because you look at the content views that a lot of teams are getting, and they must be hemorrhaging money on even making it. So that's obviously not, you know, that's not something. But yeah, brand building is extremely important. But I think in order to brand build, you also do have to be winning, I think, because otherwise, like, why the fuck do I care?
Yeah. I mean, at least in traditional sports, you can have... I think it is a fair question of how do you, if you are a team that's not winning, build fandom? I think FlyQuest has tried to do that. I don't think it's translated over to people really paying attention to their content.
So FlyQuest, I was impressed, actually. Have you noticed that they're like some of their YouTube videos are actually doing okay?
Really?
With yeah, if you go to their main page, they had a video that came out where is it? 5 days ago. It's at 55K, and they had a video come out a week ago that's at 75K.
Oh, are these shorts, or are they like the?
No, they're videos.
I'm on the FlyQuest YouTube channel. Oh,
yeah. See,
whose champion line is it anyway?
French trivia, and whose champion line is it anyway? And honestly,
oh, is this
I'll be
Takui
totally
content?
honest.
Do you think it's the Takui? It is. It's the French fans that I think are showing up for Takui, because he's in both of these videos.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, but still, this is good. And if this is what they have to do, you make him the main focal point of like the team, and then you know you get all the other players around him. That's what you're doing. That's fine. Like, but Jesus Christ! I mean, let's go over to our graveyard. Hold on.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
exactly
Oh god.
Alright, hold on. I'm on CLG's.
Yeah, the CLG YouTube is rough.
No, I mean it's getting triple digit viewership on their premiere videos.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know what they're paying the content team, right? But there's no way they're losing money every video they make.
Is this the moment where LS realizes that nobody in LCS is making money? Because I can promise you that's been
No,
how it's
I
been for a
know
while.
no one in LCS is like really like. I mean, well, I know that. I mean, every LCS team makes horrendous decisions when it comes to certain things, and I don't know how they get signed off on. I also do think that like I'm of the stance that salaries are too high. I am of that stance. There's a lot of stuff there. There's definitely there's definitely
Yeah,
a lot of
this
stuff.
is going into the thing. But I do think that the answer can't be the only way you can have bans is by winning, because you can only have so many winners in the LCS, and there's 10 teams, right? And so you're gonna just have teams that are hemorrhaging money if you can't be in the top 3, for instance. Like even FlyQuest, who has consistently been, like last year was pretty rough, but other than that, they've made finals a couple times, they've gone to Worlds a couple times, like they've done pretty well. Obviously, you can argue maybe some of their branding decisions, and you can't just be winning. But like, I don't know, it's tough. But I do think, I mean, just to get back to your point, Wizard, I think a lot about the back in the day whenever teams had players around for a lot longer, like that TSM roster that had like Dyrus and Oddwin and a lot of those folks on for a very long time. I feel like they were often like they benefited from the fact that they were obviously they were winning. Also, they were able to build up and invest in these players for a long time. It is very difficult if you are a top team and you know that you change out the majority of your players every year over year. They want to spend a bunch of time trying to get people to build fandom towards these players, because like you might invest a ton in a player and then like now your rival has them on their team. All the popularity you invest in, all the resources you invest into this player to brand build, now is like someplace else. And so I don't think in our current system of musical chairs, teams are properly incentivized to try to like build the players into superstars, because chances are they're going to be gone the next year.
Wait, EG has content. I didn't even know this existed.
Oh,
but
God.
also, it's just
Don't
like
look.
CLG.
Wizard, you and I disagree on this. I actually would love it if you would tweet. I know, don't look, Ellis. I would love it, Wizard, if you can tweet at me or maybe put it in the Discord or something like that, some of the stats around the LEC stuff, because I have actually I appreciate you bringing up the LEC information on their turnover, because I've never had somebody dive in and look at the turnover rates of the other leagues, because in my mind it's interesting. I still don't think that necessarily changes my opinion on stuff, because I think you look at LEC and they're kind of like a 2 or 3 team league in terms of popularity. So I don't know, but I'd love that. Anything you want to say at the end, and do you have any shoutouts?
No, it was a good discussion. I didn't expect to change your mind in 10 minutes, or however long I was here. I just want to shout out my friend Sam helped me get a bunch of those stats together and arguing points. Shout out to Alienware. I have an Alienware computer. I use the code. I love it. Shout out you and Mark. I really like y'all's content, both of you. I really enjoyed the LaMarcus casts on the weekends. And then
Is that what
also,
the duo is called, LaMarcus?
No, I don't think so. But thank you.
but then I just wanted to shout out LS. My favorite team ever since I started watching League was C9. And while you might not be there anymore, I really like the coaching and player structure that you set up. It's really interesting, and it really gives me a lot to pull for, even though you're not there anymore.
Thank you so much, Wizard, for the call, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, see ya.